Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Claus Connect. It is July 28th, and I am Shawn White, and I am happy you are joining us. We're going to wait just a little bit for our audience to get on here, and it's going to be a great show tonight. Going to take just a minute, I think. We thank you to Angela, our wonderful producer, for getting this all out here. Hello, Betsy. Thank you for joining me. Hello, my friend. Glad you're here. I know that I've been getting messages today. Hey, Ken. Thanks for joining me tonight. It's going to be a great show. Very informative. We'll let this get grow a little bit more. Backstage, I was telling them that I was just on TikTok, and it was really busy tonight on TikTok, so it's a good sign. Hello, Paul. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. Tonight is going to be a really informative show. Hi, Terry. Terry, I missed you on TikTok. I was on there live. That's funny. So tonight we're going to have Pamela McColl, and she's going to be talking about, she's an author. She has just wrote a book about Mrs. Claus, and she's done a ton of research on this, and it is really interesting. There's a lot of other characters involved, and she knows what she's doing here and what the research is. It's amazing. So we're going to get into some nice conversation about that. She also has some other books that she has wrote before this, and another one that has just came out. So we'll let her talk about that. Let's see what else we have on here. Well, let's do an intro again, since I always try to wait for the audience to join us. This is episode 14 of the Claus Connect. I am Shawn White, Mrs. Claus Mentage. And I am happy that you all are joining us. Hopefully we'll have some more join us that I have just met in Branson. So if you are coming from Branson, where we just met, please put something in the comments to let me know. Hello, John. Don, nice to see you. So tonight we're going to be talking about the history of Mrs. Claus. Now, I was just talking with Pamela backstage, and I did a video saying that it's important for everybody to learn this, not just a group of women that are Mrs. Clauses, because we all share carrying the traditions of Mrs. Claus, Santa, elves, all of these characters. So it's nice to learn what we can for people who are doing the research. So with that, I'm going to introduce Pamela McColl. I guess first, Angela, if you would run the pictures of Pamela, and then we will have her come on the show. And with that, I would like to introduce Pamela McColl to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's really
Thank
fun
you.
to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here, and you made the time to do this and share this with the Claus Connect and our audience. So, with that, I would like for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, please. You, the author, Pamela.
Sure. Okay. I am an author, I'm a historian, and I'm also an art historian, art collector. And I've been working on Christmas since about 2012, I guess. And I fell into the Clauses, specifically Mrs. Claus, through my work on my major book, "'Twas the Night, The Art and History of the Classic Christmas Poem," which I spent 10 years working on. I realized in 2012 that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" was turning 200 in approximately 10 years. And so I allotted myself 10 years to work on it and to go into the history of not only the poem, but the publishing and the art and the illustration. And I loved working on it because I had so much time. But in that process of working on "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" and "'Twas the Night," I had a sort of side pile of Mrs. Claus, and it kept building. And I thought, no one's ever done a really good sort of thorough history of this character. And yet she's been around for almost as long as Santa Claus in America. So I thought I would do that after this other book, which I did. So I'm really thrilled. It comes out on September 20th, and it was so much fun to work on it. I also am a child's rights activist, so I work in tobacco prevention. And I'll just give you a little bit of my background. In 2012, I was working on the smoke-free movies campaign. We were trying to, out of the University of Southern California, trying to put labels on films that said, this film has smoking as a warning for children and parents so the kids
Right.
wouldn't see it. Back then, people were laughing at us, going, "That's a stupid idea." However, we now have smoking warnings on films. But at that time, I decided as a publisher to do something to sort of call more awareness to the fact that we still have a predatory industry still going after youth for tobacco. And so I decided to take the smoking out of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," which is the most famous poem ever written. And I just snipped out the words that refer to the stump of a pipe and the wreath of smoke around Santa's head. And I published the book and I put it out there, but it caught in massive international media. And I'm not underestimating that. I had no idea it was going to do that. I thought it would just be a project and I'd, have a platform and do my thing. But Barbara Walters on The View picked it up. And
Wow.
then Stephen Colbert did a spoof on me. And then NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. And those three people, because of how prominent they were, when Brian Williams read it as a news story in NBC Nightly News that a woman had done this, it went around the world and it went to China and it went to India and it went all over the place.
That's
And it afforded me this phenomenal platform. And it also, sort of because it wasn't like a 1 or 2 year project. All of a sudden was very much part of the whole "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." I decided to get involved in its history. I also love the poem, and so I really wanted to do something to celebrate its 200th birthday. So I've spent the last 14 years of my life working on "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
wow.
Mhm. And last year I was able to be really, really involved in the bicentennial. I nominated Clement Clark Moore into New York Writers Hall of Fame. They accepted it, and we did a huge party in New York. New York, I organized, and then I got the mayor of the city of New York to declare it Clement Clark Moore Day, and then the White House to the Library of Congress, and the National Book Festival in Washington D.C. I was able to participate a little bit in that, and I actually have a letter from Joe Biden framed on my desk thanking me. So, you know, really fun to be involved in something like that. And and I think Mrs. Claus, it came from all of that work that I sort of fell in love with this character and her history. So there's the backstory. That's me.
So, the night before Christmas, I got to go back to this
Okay.
and tell you. I don't know if I've told you, we've had a couple conversations, but what I found helps me um, gain the children's interest is I actually talk about the history of the book, the author, set the stage before I even read the book. And I talk, so I go into that because I felt it was so important to teach the children where the book came from to get it
Right.
does get their interest by doing that. And
Mhm.
I talk to them about imagination, which is that kind of is the key. But then they listen to the history, they think about the fireplace he's sitting in front of and all the that. And so I appreciate that you've done all that. I think that is so cool. Um, and another
Yeah.
thing, when you talk about Mrs. Claus, when I first started this, I was scrambling trying to find, any information I could find on Mrs. Claus myself. And some of the pictures I've seen you put out, old pictures that I absolutely love. I did see a few of those doing my research, but to know that you have put so much time to get all of
Mm.
that together, for me now to just go through this book, it's just a gift that you've given us all.
Well,
So,
thank you. It
um,
was it was very fun to work on. I mean, this is a character who, you know, she's the very best of all of us. And when you work on something like this, I think I was telling somebody this the other day. I said, when you work on Mrs. Claus as much as I have, because I not only wrote Wondrous Mrs. Claus, it's the first ever art literary history of the character, I also just finished writing this, which is What Would Mrs. Claus Do, which is a little inspirational book that's sort of based on the what would Grace Kelly, what would Audrey Hepburn, what would, Frida, what would Dolly Parton do.
mhm.
And I think I'm actually a nicer, better person after working on these books because
Oh,
it's given me pause to sort of think about Mrs. Claus's behavior and the gentle side and the sort of the this lovely sort of benevolent side of her and the concept of giving anonymously without the need for gratitude or for applause or a thank you. Like when was the last time you just gave something to somebody without needing to be thanked or when you gave something and you didn't get a thank you note going that person didn't thank me. Mrs. Claus doesn't look around, and nor does Santa. They don't look around for thanks. They just give, and it makes you want to sort of do anonymous sort of acts of generosity. Like leave a book in a book, those little book houses, like leave some books for somebody without having to be thanked. It's like it's yeah, I think one can be a better person, and I'm sure all of you. I've met many of you. We've been to 6 different Santa Claus conventions in the last couple of years, and lovely, lovely bunch of people. Lovely.
yeah,
So I think it
for
all
sure.
makes all of us better, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I will say that I just talked about this in Branson, but I, instead of sending out thank yous, because I want to just finish the job and be done when I leave, because there's other jobs to get to. So I actually just leave a gift in quiet, in silence. I'll leave a little ornament or and a thank you note when I'm done with the gig. And
Hmm.
sometimes I'll hide it and I'll send them a text saying, look for the bag. It's behind the chair on the porch or something, whatever. But I kind of, it's just a nice thing that I do. And I will see you next year. Merry Christmas. Just a nice, quiet, lovely thing. And so I
Hmm.
understand what you're saying. And
Hmm.
in the heart of Mrs. Claus is, to me personally, is to put on like my clothes that I can wear for the 10-hour days, right, with all the thousands of children, and that's being Mrs. Claus to me.
Hmm.
It's not the foo-foo and the, fancy stuff. It's really getting in the trenches with the kids. So,
And I also think, the hard times, like the children who've got the really tough situations, death of a grandparent at Christmas or pet or friend or spouse or not spouse, but parent or
yeah,
sibling or something, the really tough stuff. I've encountered some of those conversations with people. It's been really, really interesting to see the role, and the reach that Mrs. Claus can have and the compassion. But you know, I went looking for Mrs. Claus in history and I was astounded how many early stories there were because
yeah,
she was really quite prevalent in the 1870s and 1860s, 1850s, all in there. And yet we don't know those stories very well. And that she, came on the scene 25 years after Santa Claus. That's pretty amazing. So you've got 'twas 1822, 1823. You've got Mrs. Claus 1849, so we're not talking 25 years kind of thing, not far
Mhm.
behind, right? And her role is so different from the very beginning. In the first 20 years, it's incredible the variety. Like we certainly in this day and age, like in the last 20 years, 30 years, since the 60s when the television specials came along to the commercials we have now, the mini commercials from Boots and places, the variety of Mrs. Claus is pretty staggering. But it was really interesting back then too that we had these variations on her. Um, you had her arriving in 1849. The very first time we ever hear of Mrs. Claus, she's not described as Mrs. Claus. She's Santa Claus's wife. Is in 1849 in a story that is a fable, and she comes as a disguise. And the fable is that this young woman has run off with her. She's eloped, kind of, and that they come to the door dressed up as older people, and they come into this home that's very poor, and the people there give them what they have, even though they have very little on Christmas Eve. And in the morning, they find all these presents, all these food items, everything, and then they discover that it's actually their long lost daughter and her new husband, and he's wealthy, and they've come to sort of ask for their forgiveness. And so it's a real story of redemption. But she's not described. She's not called Mrs. Claus. That comes in 1851 with the Yale Literary Review, and she's called Mrs. Claus, and that's the very first time. So she really is a product of Connecticut. Um, when I'm
Mm.
going on tour, which I'm doing, I'm going on a book tour starting in September. So I kind of claim her for Connecticut because of that. Even though the first story, which talks about Mrs. Claus, Mrs. Santa Claus having a wife, is from Philadelphia, the first time we hear of Mrs. Claus is at Yale. So I kind of think it's theirs.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know, I think that's kind of fair.
So was
And
the first one named Goody? Is that who you're talking about? No.
no, that's much
No.
later. She's way
Okay.
later. That's 1888. So
Okay.
way decades later. So you've got 1849 is the Christmas legend, and it's the first time we hear of Mrs. Claus, Santa Claus having a wife. Then we have 1851, which is the Yale, and I can read it to you. I'll just read what it says. It says 1851. Mrs. Claus was first mentioned by name in the holiday week December in the Yale literary magazine New Haven, Connecticut, with the initials AB. After Christmas dinner, guests assembled and a small decorated tree was brought in. There appeared near the tree an old man with bent form and a cane. Suddenly in bounded that jolly, fat, and funny old elf, Santa Claus. His array was indescribably fantastic. He seemed to have done his best, and we should think had Mrs. Santa Claus to help him. That's the first time in the world we've ever seen the words Mrs. Santa Claus. Um, so I think that's really great. Uh, the next thing we have is she makes her stage debut in 1854, and she does that at the New York Lunatic Asylum up in Utica, in New York. So that's the very first time we ever see her on stage. And she presents in a song and dance performance done by the patients. They wrote the play, they performed the play, and she appears holding a baby and singing, and she's Mrs. Santa Claus.
I
So
wonder
that's the
what
first
made
time.
the whatever got them to do that. What to put Mrs. Claus in there, you know?
Yeah, it's really fascinating because in the 1850s, what happened was not to get into this too much, but the field of psychiatry took an enormous turn to the positive. And instead of people being in these institutions as sort of, there's a thing called insane asylum tourism, where you'd go and you'd pay to
Oh,
see the animals in the cages kind of stuff. I mean,
yikes.
and
Okay.
he would dance with them. It was really awful. But then this doctor, Dr. Abram, came along and he said, no, this is all wrong. And he was actually the first person who started the American Psychiatric Journal. Like he's a major, major figure in American psychiatry. But he said, no, we need to think of these people as they need reform. They need to have social interaction. They need to have art and gardens and theater and be taken care of and in beautiful surroundings. And so the New York Lunatic Asylum was one of the first, and people would go and tour it because of its gardens and its art. And they went to theater productions. And these
Wow.
people were nurtured. And so the whole compassionate side of psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff. Now,
Yeah.
how they got Mrs. Claus into it, we don't know.
Huh.
But someone decided that Santa Claus should have a wife, and she dances and sings and has this baby. It's really pretty fascinating stuff. But it's we don't have a lot of it. We only have a few clips of what she's doing. Um, but then you get to the 1860s, and that's where it really takes hold because you have Harper's after the Civil War. Harper's, they've got printing presses, but they've also got railroads, so you can do transportation of periodicals, right? You can do distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So Harper's, as you all know, takes off in a huge way with Thomas Nast and everybody. But Harper's also takes on some of the stories of Mrs. Claus early on. So in the 1860s, you start to see her appear there, and you see her illustrated. And perhaps one of the best is the one in 1869. It's called Jessie Brown and Mrs. Claus. And Mrs. Claus appears in this little town. She wants to help this child who's sick. And Santa stays outside and she comes inside and she's covered in, she's young and she has hair down past her waist. She has pearls and diamonds. She has snow glittering in her hair. This beautiful long gown. It's all illustrated. And she gives this child toys and things and trinkets and things. And then she goes back out. So there you have 1869 Mrs. Claus flying around in a sleigh with Santa, doing her own visits by herself to a child that she thought needed, her attention. So I love that. It's one of my very favorite stories, and I actually printed the whole thing in my book because I love it so much. So,
So Mrs. Claus, it seems like she like was there for special things too, special children that needed a little extra or something like that. It sounds like.
there's an aspect of Mrs. Claus early on where she can hear children's wishes, the ones that Santa can't bring in a sleigh. So it's things like, and she also has the ability in lots of these stories to whisper into people's ears to make a wish come true for someone, which is
Wow.
really interesting. So if something that can't go in a sleigh, let's say, I don't know, I can't even remember some of them, but she'll whisper in someone's ear something to help. Oh, I know the one. There's a one where a man, uh, his stepson knows that there's a family that's very poor and yet his father is very wealthy. So she whispers in his ear to ask the father to give them money and food, and he does. So she sits outside in the snow and she listens for him to do it, and he does. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Oh,
Very
wow.
benevolent. Yeah, really beautiful stuff.
I like this
And
whole thought of this.
yeah. And then so that's and then 1868, 1869 in there. There's also Happy Christmas. It's a story. It's a beautiful little book. I own it. I bought one. It's only about this big, and it's just a couple little pages kind of thing. And it's the first illustration of Mrs. Claus, and she's in a disguise. She's an aunt. Her name's Aunt Kitty, and she comes on Christmas night with money. And the whole story is about Mrs. Claus. She doesn't come on Christmas Eve. She has things to do at the North Pole. She comes on Christmas night for anyone who needed money. So that's kind of interesting sort of take on her. Um,
She should be
so
going to everybody's house then after
yeah,
Christmas,
no kidding.
right? She's gonna be busy.
Yes.
This
So what I thought I'd do too is I thought I'd read you some of the descriptions of her because they're so fun, right?
okay.
Let's just do a couple of these. I think they're
Okay.
really great. Because I think that's probably the thread that I find the most interesting to this is that she's so different. She's redhead, blonde, brunette, young, old, middle-aged, ingenue. She's a little mouse kind of character. She's described by sound as, oh, you're like a little mouse, and then she's like quite vibrant, and then she's scared, and then she's brave. She's so many things. It's like it's amazing. Um, so these are some of my favorites. So this is from 1885, and it's from
Okay.
something called Miss Kris Kringle, and
Okay.
it's dear old lady, small and rosy, in the nipping Christmas weather, nestled close, so warm and cozy. These two chat for hours together. So it sets the scene of their relationship, right? Lovely, right? So if I were in your places, Rob and Hale, Kate and Mary, I would be in the good graces of this lovely, shy old fairy.
Oh,
She's a fairy, right? That's
okay.
fun. And then here's one from 1916. I like this one too. Oh, Mrs. Santa Claus was a very sensible old lady, you may be sure. A soft, lacy collar and white cap, and the mountain dwarfs gave her gold rimmed spectacles to help her as she did her sewing. So I think that's the beginning of glasses, spectacles. I think that comes in 1916. Um,
Okay.
and then this one is from mid 20th century. She was a lady tall and fair with a quiet smile and a loving air. I love that. It's a really beautiful poem called Mrs. Claus's Present. In that, it's not public domain, so I couldn't put it in my book, but it's a really wonderful poem by Alice Morris. And it goes into depth about her relationship with the reindeer and how she feeds them breakfast and goes out every night. And it's probably one of my very favorite poems about Mrs. Claus.
Okay.
You can find it online. It's called Mrs. Claus's Present by Alice S. Morris, who was a major journalist. And then the last one I'll share with you is from 2011, and she was a very pretty little girl with very long red hair that she preferred to wear in a long plait to the side. So it's just fun to sort of find all these descriptions of Mrs. Claus. The
Hmm.
There's one other one that I should probably read because I think it's pretty unusual.
I
We'll
do tell children, I always tell them that Santa had the red hair because I have pictures. And then I tell them that my hair used to be red too, especially with the little ones that are in front of me that have red hair. They love it.
Yeah, for the fairy world. So this one is 1864, right? Mrs. Claus appears in a dream in the novel The Metropolites by Robert St. Clair. And I fell asleep after breakfast thinking of my misfortune when Santa Claus sent his wife to see me on the subject. She had on Hessian high boots, a dozen of short red petticoats, and an old straw bonnet.
Wow.
So, the variation is just so.
Everywhere.
Everybody just seems to have never read anything that anybody else had ever written about her.
That's very interesting, right?
Right?
Because
Like
with
she doesn't.
Santa Claus, I mean, there was stuff handed down, right? Somewhat.
Well, 'twas the night before Christmas. The description of him as a jolly elf, right? The He's not in red in 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, but he's dressed all in fur from his head to his toe, right?
Right.
Um, and that sticks. I mean, the whole sort
Yeah.
of Santa Claus as this jolly old elf character sticks in 'Twas, and because 'Twas is so incredibly famous, and 10 generations of children have read it, that's kind of how we think of Santa. Whereas Mrs. Claus, there's there wasn't a seminal work. There wasn't one poem that everybody went, that's Mrs. Claus, right?
Right.
There were people that came to it. And the other thing that hits Mrs. Claus, her story, is the suffrage movement, because you get to
Yeah.
1870 now and you're in full swing of the suffrage movement. And she's right in there, right?
I like
So,
that one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it,
So so I don't know what year it was, but there was an opera done. Have you heard about that? An opera with a Mrs. Claus in it?
no, which is the opera that's got Mrs. Claus in it?
There was an opera. I don't know it offhand. I should have looked it up.
I shall go look that up. I
There
have
was
not bumped into Mrs. Claus in an opera, but that
yeah.
no, and I did do some in the last, I guess in the last month. My book was published months and months ago, but I did do a search in AI recently, and because
Yeah.
I've just sort of started AI for the very first time. I didn't use it for any of my books, none of my research. Um, in hindsight, maybe that was my folly, but I didn't do it. I did it by hand. I did it by research and getting the original newspapers and magazines, and going to archives and doing all these things. But I did find things in there that mentioned by AI that I cannot find, that just do not exist, and it's all secondary source kind of thing. Um, well, they'll mention something that was in, but you go and look up the actual thing they're quoting it from, and it's not there. So it's all very confusing. But I should maybe ask AI, opera Mrs. Claus, see what
Yeah.
comes up.
It was probably a couple years ago. I was looking into stuff and I came across that as the first thing. I mean, I didn't find any of this stuff. I wish I would have found what you have found. I wish I would have known you sooner. It would have made
Yeah.
my life easier too to understand this stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm sure I miss things. I mean, I'm sure I miss things. I mean, I have a Google alert on Mrs. Claus. I get at least 6 alerts a day, on
really,
things, yeah, on things going on with Mrs. Claus, obituaries, but a lot of obituaries. But I also get a lot of anything that's going on with Mrs. Claus.
wow.
Christmas in July, I had a flurry all day long, like, for about 2 weeks either side of this. I'm still getting them. I got a whole bunch today. So I
So
usually
you're like
track
our
everything.
superhero. You need to keep track of, we so applaud you, believe me.
I do. I read everything on Mrs. Claus that I get, and then I post what I can on Facebook that I think is interesting to other people. But I I just it's tough because some of these things are gone forever. Some of these issues, right, of these old
Right.
magazines and old newspapers and things, they're gone. And I think that there's probably a lot more Mrs. Claus. And someday, as things become more digitalized, and maybe we'll be able to find more of them. But yeah, it's frustrating when you go and you have an inkling of something, you've heard something, there's something, and you can't find it. It's like, ah, but with my book, as you mentioned, there were some finds. There were some. I'd go get an issue of a magazine I wanted, and I'd open it up and see a picture of her and go, "Oh wow, right,
Wow.
wow, right." And I
Yeah.
own most of this. I mean, I've everything in my book I pretty well bought because you kind of have to. You got to see it. You got to
Yeah.
go get. If let's say they say it was in Ladies Home Journal from 1910, you got to go get it because you've
Yeah.
got to see it was actually there, but you've also got to see what else is around it. So yeah, some really wonderful stuff. And um, I, uh, I mean, when I hit the suffrage movement, the 1870s, I think that's where it got complicated because up until that point, you've got Mrs. Claus as this sort of, very kind character who's running around doing things. And there's a few stories where she sort of says, "I want to go on the sleigh," and uh, and she does. She goes off and she battles some elves and does things. But when the suffrage movement hits, she it really starts this whole conversation about equality, right? Of them both going out there and doing their thing and recognition. And
Hmm.
I find that really interesting. She at some point gets very feisty and very political, and then there's a couple of stories where they really beat her down and say, "No, you belong in the home," and they have her head planting in the snowbanks, and Santa does tricks on her, like takes out the present she's going to give and puts in turnips.
Oh my
You
goodness.
So it gets kind of, and they even say you should just stay at home. You're like, what are you doing out here? You got to wreck your bonnet and wreck your clothes, and but uh, but I think she comes
So it
out the
just
other
kind of gave
end
you flavor of probably what was going on in the world.
very much. But then, as you mentioned, when you get to Goody in 1888, yes, she goes off on the sleigh with Santa, but they have their relationships, a good relationship. Like they're together. It's
Yeah.
there's there's it's a really good. I mean, Kathy Lee Bates, of who she is, right, with American the Beautiful, very important writer, and that's a very important story because it's so famous. I guess everybody sort of thinks of Goody, um, but it's really charming. It doesn't really have that kick that some of the other suffrage stories do.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but then you turn, you follow, as you said, it's the times that you're in, and you get into the, you know, um, early 20th century and you start seeing the vixens show up. I found that really fun to see where the short skirts in Malibu came from. You've got Mrs. Claus loses her skirt pretty well. It's like she's up
Yeah.
to her stockings with Joan Crawford in 1924. I mean, not
Wow.
really wearing a skirt,
Wow.
And they did it for publicity, right?
Definitely.
These starlets, right? So you've got Joan Crawford, Betty Davis. Shirley Temples wasn't a vixen, but she was dressed up. Um, and yeah, Carol Lombard, all kinds of them. They get into parades then too. The Hollywood parade, you start seeing Mrs. Claus showing up, but as a vixen. Right? Like,
That's just everything we
yeah,
fight now fight against, you know. No.
right under suffrage, she turns into this, forgot the skirt kind of thing. But then you hit, you know, the First World War. Actually, I skipped over, but First World War, Mrs. Claus shows up. Those are the first performers when they go off to the front and they actually go. A woman from Chicago goes off and she performs Mrs. Claus in Europe for the troops,
Wow.
and so do some of the movie stars, and really wonderful people who did that. And I think they also they start in department stores with Santa, but they don't do um, it's not quite as elaborate. It's really after the second or during the Second World War when she really steps in, and they sort of replace some Santa Clauses and do their sort of take on the role of meeting children during the Second World War when there's less men to do it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But and then the really big push, I guess, comes in the 1950s with Nat King Cole and Mrs. Santa Claus, the song,
Hmm.
because he's so famous and it's such a wonderful song that that really helps her popularity, I think, too. And White Christmas, of course, because White Christmas,
Yeah,
with the two of them dressed up like Mrs. Claus at the end there, it's everybody saw White Christmas,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that helped.
I watched it a
And then
million
you,
times when I was a kid.
yeah,
Yep.
and then you get into the TV specials that were created for my generation, the baby boomers, and in the 60s, 1960s, and you have Mrs. Claus showing up in Rudolph and in other stories, Jessica, um, the Christmas Santa Claus Almost Missed, those kind of stories start to happen of those TV productions. And even in Charlie Brown's Peanuts, she's mentioned. Sally writes her a letter and says, you know,
I didn't
say
know
hi to
that.
Mrs. Claus. Say hi to Mrs. Claus for me, there, Santa.
Uh,
So she's mentioned in a lot of things. But the really big piece, I guess, not only was there TV shows at that time in the '60s where you've got her portrayed as sort of an older woman, but you have Family Circle magazine. And Family Circle magazine does 3 or 4 stories with covers of Mrs. Claus, including by Garth Williams. And Garth Williams illustrated Charlotte's Web. Garth Williams is probably one of the #1 illustrators in the 20th century. And so he did a lovely, lovely story. He wrote it and he illustrated it. It's on the cover of Family Circle magazine. And it was never put into a book or anything. But he has her as a jolly, sort of robust, polka dots. And she's lovely. She's soft and lovely. And because it's Family Circle, which everybody saw, right?
right.
It's very influential. And Garth Williams being who he is, Stuart Little, Charlotte's Web, all kinds of
Yep.
things.
Yep.
I have that magazine. I would encourage any of you, if you can get a copy of it, go get it. It's lovely to have, and you can get them on eBay for maybe 20 or 30 bucks,
Yeah.
and you won't get it anywhere else. Like
I
it's not
think I have
online.
it. I have some of
Yeah,
these because some of the
yeah,
pictures in your book, that's the
yeah,
first thing. I like antiques and vintage, of course, but I
yeah,
started collecting them. So
yeah.
right now we're going to go to a commercial break. And then when we come back, I've got some questions from the audience for you.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So if we can go on a
Okay.
commercial break, Angela, please. Okay, from Ernie. I'm not sure how you pronounce Ernie's last name, Rousseau. Pamela, can you talk about your book launch with the New England Santa Society? So,
Sure. It's going to be at the Old Sturbridge Museum, and it's on September the 20th, and it's open to the public. And I'll be there, and the New England Santa Society will be there, and it'll be great. It's
oh,
a great
wonderful.
place. I think it's circa 1822. It's the same year as 'twas. It's kind of fun.
Wonderful. Betsy says she loves this, and she knew she's a fairy, the Tooth Fairy, Spirited Tooth Fairy, and Mother Goose. So she knew Mrs. Claus was a fairy. So great. And then Mary, who is Mrs. Claus in Michigan, She says she loves so many interesting details of the history of Mrs. Claus. So there we go. Let's see. Um, go back on the live. And I wanted to say hello to Mary, Don, Sal was on here, Dave. We had some people joining us. Don wanted to know, he had some questions on here. So we need to show your book again, I guess, because he's.
Oh, sure.
Um, and he can get this book where?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere.
Okay.
Or me on Facebook. If you just text me, I can send you a copy.
Okay, there you
And
go.
this is the other one.
I want to get that
And
one.
this
Okay.
is my Twas. And this is my Twas the Night. This is the one that took me 10 years and yeah,
Wow.
rearranged my world for a while. Yeah.
Wow. Let me see if there's any more questions on here.
Yeah.
Hello, Dave. I'm glad you got on here. Okay. So I had some big questions for you, too, that I was. How far back in history can we trace Mrs. Claus? What was the first Mrs. Claus trace of her?
1849.
1849.
America. She's American.
America.
1849, 1849 Philadelphia, 1851 Connecticut. But I'm going to give you just, I think, because I think this is of interest to everybody. Let's give you a couple more first, because I think it's kind of fun. I mean, in my book, I go into her origin story a lot, you know, Constantinople and all of that, how people have placed her. But in literature, as far as a literary review, she's 1849, 1851. But as far as the literature, they've got her all the way back to Constantinople. So it depends on what you're reading, right?
Yep.
So just a second here. Just a second, sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to tell you some of the first, because I think they're fun. Here we go. So just does everybody know the first Santa Claus in a store? Anybody know in America? What year? It's the first time Santa Claus was used in a store to attract children. 1841.
Wow.
1841 in Philadelphia. Chef James Wood, who was a very famous chef, James Wood Parkinson was a very famous chef, and he wanted people to come to his delicatessen, so he had a Santa Claus there.
He was way ahead of the times there.
Yes.
Wow.
1890, James Edgar, who's in Brockton, Massachusetts, appeared as Santa Claus, launching the first department store Santa, 1890. 1899 is the first time we have a Mrs. Claus presenter that I can find. It's in Ohio, and it could be a theatrical production. I'm not 100% because I found a play that sounds an awful lot like what was written about in the newspaper, but it doesn't say it was a play, so I'm not sure. And then 1906, Boston became the first department store to hire a double act, Mr. and Mrs. Claus.
Ah.
So that's fun, right?
It is fun.
Fun. So lots of history.
Okay, let's see if we have some more big questions on here. So is Mrs. Claus a fairy, an elf, or a mortal woman? What?
Well, it depends on who you're reading. As we said in the 1885 story, she is an elf. She's a fairy.
Fairy. Okay.
So the fairy, they've got her as a fairy, and her godmother is Queen Mab, Queen of the Fairies. So if it's her godmother, that's pretty close to being related. And she has this capacity for whispering in people's ears, right? And wishes. So that's kind of interesting. And there's another reference to she's a fairy in quite a few of the stories. She has a fairy quality for sure. Yeah. So in 1870, Santa Claus and Joan, her name is Joan.
Okay.
By Anna Beach. And it appeared in Wood's Housekeeping magazine. I had to go find this magazine and buy it.
Wow.
Get this because this stuff's not digitalized. You cannot get this online. And this is really, I think if you're building a Santa Claus performer or a Mrs. Claus, this is a piece you can use that I think is really fun and it's
Okay.
got some legitimacy to it because it's 1870. So, dear Santa, once more smile. I can charm the reindeer's hurts away. And if you'll listen a little while, I will make your sad heart light and gay. This is her speaking. My godmother was a fairy queen, and she
Ooh.
came to me on our wedding day to wish me joy from her own fair land. So take, dear child, with my wishes kind, this little purse. This is what she says, the fairy godmother, right? This little purse for a wedding gift. In days to come, you may sometimes find sorrow and care from your heart till lift. 'Tis a fairy purse, and it's always full. And if ever Santa wants more gold, he has only the silken string to pull. So the power of Santa's giving comes from the fairy godmother of Mrs. Claus.
Wow.
Fun? Is that
Wow.
fun?
Yes. So where do I find this to read it later? What is it?
It's in my book. It's in my
It's in your
book.
book. Okay, I
It's in
can
my
find
book.
it.
Yep, it's in my
Okay.
book. And I mean, I have the whole story because I have the book. I actually own this magazine.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting. Now, Queen Mab is really interesting because Queen Mab goes back to the 14th century. Queen Mab is written about by Spenser and Shakespeare and everybody. She's the queen of the fairies. But I found something, and I'd heard again. I found something, and I thought, is that real? I'd heard that Queen Mab had been flying around delivering presents before Santa in North America. And I thought I had to find the source. And so I found a librarian and I said, I can't find this. I cannot find this I cannot find this journal that this Lady Jane apparently wrote about this in 1700s. And so she and I worked on this and we found the journal of Lady Jane tucked in behind her husband's memoirs.
Oh my gosh.
So we found it.
Where was
And
this
there's the
at?
letter,
This is
and there's the letter from her saying, here we go. 1807. So this is 1807. Her diary from Christmas Eve, 1807. Tomorrow, this is before Twas Night for Christmas. Christmas, that's 1822. So this is before Santa Claus shows up, which shows up in Fenimore Cooper's The Pioneers for the first time ever in 1821, 1822. Tomorrow is Christmas, and the children are saying, oh, Mama, what do you think the fairy will put in our stockings?
wow.
So she's
Love
in
it.
North America, right? She's writing from New Brunswick, but this is Lady Jane Hunter. But we couldn't find it, and I again you get a hint of something. Like I heard someone saying, "Oh, Queen Mab was delivering presents," and I got hold of the Fairy Institute or whatever in England. They said we've never heard of Queen Mab delivering presents ever. So I said, "Well, I've heard I sort of heard something somewhere," and so we went looking for it, and we found it.
So where did you find this? Where were you at?
I was in an
Actually.
archives with her husband's memoirs, and we found it tucked in behind his memoirs, her journal.
And what this
So
was a different
it's not
different
cataloged under her name; it's cataloged under him. But this librarian was great. That's all I can say.
and what
That
country
was
was this in? This was
this is America.
America. Okay, okay.
Yeah, America. So that was all very good.
Wow.
And there's lots of stories in here about elves. If you're talking, there's the whole Santa being an elf, but there's lots of stories about her being given the glasses by the elves that they live in a green and white house or Christmas with forests of Christmas trees, whatever else with the elves. So there's lots of mentions of elves who kind of make the scene around 1850 through Louisa May Alcott and people. So the elves are kind of, and the messengers, elves sort of show up around there in the
Yeah.
story of the Clauses around 1850, somewhere in there. So kind of interesting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think you and I talked about the Mother Goose, which I'd love to spend some time discussing with you if we have
Yes,
time.
please. That's
Yeah,
please go feel free. I want you to
yeah,
talk about this.
sure. So Thomas Nast, as you all know, comes to Harper's in 1863. His first Santa Claus is Santa Claus as a Yankee. He's giving out presents to the Yankee soldiers during the Civil War. First time he'd ever painted Santa Claus in Harper's, anywhere actually. And then he he decides to sort of embellish Santa Claus later on, and it becomes a really big deal. So 1863 until 1883, he paints a picture of Santa Claus dancing with Mother Goose. So he sort of picked up on this thread of Mother Goose being part of Christmas. Mother Goose arrives in 1695. Mother Goose is 1695 from France, right? That's where she first comes on the scene in the world. And somehow she's been part of Christmas pantomimes in London before we had all of these um, new characters come along. Mother Goose was Christmas pantomime. It was what everybody went to, and they did it for decades. So somehow Thomas Nast plunks Mother Goose in with Santa, and he has her flying around with him and things. But in 1881, a writer decides that Mother Goose should marry Santa. And so there's a story called The Marriage of Santa Claus, and he marries Mother Goose. And I
Oh.
actually bought an original painting. I found a painting of Mother Goose and Santa,
Oh, wow.
and I found it and I bought it. Um, and I put it in my book because, again, it's not online, and I had to buy it to get it to photograph it. So,
Wow.
but but then what happens is in 1922, um, Sarah Addington comes along, who's a writer for the New York Tribune or one of the big newspapers, and she writes about Santa Claus in a major way. And she writes for Ladies' Home Journal. She wrote for them for decades, and she writes a lot of stories about Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus. She writes a really wonderful book called The Great Adventures of Mrs. Claus, and it's very expensive. I don't actually own. I had one. I sold it. They're hundreds of dollars, $400 kind of thing. But I read the stories. They're great. But this is the one I bought and republished it. So I redesigned this. This is a Sarah Addington book. It's called The Boy Who Lived in Pudding Lane. This is 1922. And it's illustrated by Gertrude Kay, who was one of the illustrators of Alice in Wonderland and very famous Golden Age illustrator. So we took all of her art and we redid it. And what's fascinating about The Boy Who Lived in Pudding Lane is that Mrs. Claus, and the illustrations are just gorgeous, but they meet, and they meet as she is Bessie, the candlestick maker's niece,
Okay.
and Santa is a little Santa who wants to go off to the North Pole and be the gift giver. And so what happens is his grandmother is Mother Goose, and
Okay.
Mother Goose gets together with King Cole. And they say, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this happen? Here she is. Here's Mother Goose.
Love it.
So how are we going to make this happen for them? And so King Cole, merry old soul, he goes, I'll give them a castle in the North Pole. I'll help them get there. I'll get them started in life. And so off they go. So Mother Goose, I think that we could bring Mother Goose into back into all these things. I having I have a brand new 1 week old baby grandson. I'm a very big fan of Mother Goose. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle kind of stuff. And
Yes.
I think that keeping her alive and keeping her nursery rhymes alive and all that they tell through the whole Christmas season or off season, Easter, or whatever else you're thinking of. But as we were talking about, King Cole could come along as well, right? Merry old soul,
Yeah. I
right?
love your suggestion on that. I haven't figured out
Yeah.
who's going to be my King Cole yet, but
But it might be fun for Sanders to be King Cole too,
I
because
know.
he's a merry old soul with doesn't he have crows or like isn't there a crow pie or something? I don't know. There's so much great stuff
Yeah.
in Mother Goose, the
Yeah.
dog. There's so much, right? That
Yes.
have
My
fun with.
my mother and my great grandmother used to say these nursery rhymes constantly to me as a child. So I
Yeah.
have a very much a fondness. I even have the little blackbirds that you can put in the pie so the steam can go
Yeah.
out, the
Yes.
little
Yes.
antique blackbirds
Yes.
in the pie.
Yes.
Yeah, we have them.
I was teaching my granddaughter who's 3. Mary had a little lamb the other day, and Sarah Hale, who was the editor of Gaudis, who was the one who got Abraham Lincoln to do Thanksgiving as a national event, who promoted Christmas trees, who they say was the equivalent of Oprah and Martha Stewart in one human being.
Wow.
She was that influential as a trendsetter. She wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb. And so here I was singing Sarah Hale's Mary Had a Little Lamb to my 3-year old, knowing all the history I know. I know her entire life story um, of this woman who's so accomplished. But she did happen to write Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I thought this is so lovely to be able to pass that along to another generation. Um,
That's
it's not just any old little tune.
no, and that's why we're here listening to you today.
Mm,
It's because there's many of us that want to know the history on this stuff because like I said earlier, when I'm talking with the children, I talk about where the book came from. I'm trying to
yeah.
teach them. I'm trying to have them fall in love with reading and all of these old stories and things to carry it on. So like Betsy that's on here, she plays Mother Goose year round. So she's
Mm,
loving this right now because
yeah.
nobody talks about Mother Goose. It's
Well,
important.
Sarah Hale, and just about Sarah Hale for a minute. Sarah Hale was a young woman. She was widowed with 5 small children, I believe, young. She had an ability to write. She wrote one of the first um, anti-slavery books in America. She wrote something that was popular, and then someone recognized that she could write, and then she became the editor of Gaudio's, which was the most influential women's magazine for decades. And then she wrote Lincoln 15 or 17 times saying, can we please do Thanksgiving on a national level? Like, she's the one that introduced, she very much like Queen Victoria. She's the one that airbrushed out Queen Victoria's crown and his something to make it sort of the Christmas tree more adaptable. That picture of the royal family with the tree, that's all
Yeah.
Sarah Hale stuff. But no, so I think bringing Mother Goose into this is terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that Betsy and were doing is, and as you can see from the pictures, wait, right there, there's a tooth fairy and Mrs. Claus are best friends.
Yeah, yeah. Why
So
not?
this has given her and I, like, our stories are starting to, develop. Like, now that we know that there's a fairy involved in Mrs. Claus too, that we can make the story even bigger and broader and
Hmm.
colorful and everything. So it's exciting.
It is
Um,
exciting.
let me see what other questions I wanted. How about costuming for Mrs. Claus? Have you seen common threads with these years, or what? What?
Well, I mean, everywhere from Jessie Brown in 1869 to the long flowing gowns with the pearls and the jewels and the glistening hair down past your waist, like, um, pretty phenomenal stuff. So very medieval kind of looking, and then all the way through to, Angela Lansbury in 1995 in Mrs. Santa Claus, in the sort of 1910 style, 1916, that era, sort of the flat hat, the
Yeah,
boater hats, and the whole wardrobe thing, the plaids and everything, and the furs. But I mean, the change is pretty crazy. It goes through every single era. So you can, if you wanted to develop your character and you had a certain, look. I personally find the Boots commercials, the mini commercials that they've made in the last 20 years, really fun. Um,
mhm,
with the red leather gloves and Janet McTeer is so great. She's such a great Mrs. Claus, but she's sort of so different than you sort of think of her, right?
yeah, yeah.
But sometimes I have 30-year-old twin daughters, and every once in a while I'll show them something I'm working on, and I show them a picture of Mrs. Claus. They go, "Who is that?" And I went, "That's Mrs. Claus." They went, "No, it's not." And they had this tunnel version. Like I went, "No, she could be anything." They went, "No, she can't." Like they just had this vision, and it would have been, they were born in 1988, so it would have been something that influenced them, growing up. So it's kind of, if you grew up like I did with Peanuts and Rudolph, that's my Mrs. Claus, I guess, because that's how I was oriented toward. That's how I met her, right? Probably in
Very much.
Rudolph.
Yep.
So, it's kind of. But then you see these new commercials and things, and I really love those commercials. I think they're really great. Especially the one with John McTeer. Um, so, I mean, the clothes. I mean, from color, red, green, blues, everything. I think personally, I've seen so many Santas. I've met so many Mrs. Clauses in the last couple of years. Hundreds of them, and I like when a costume has some detail and some intrigue to it. Like I like the idea of having like a little money bag or a little magic dust or little like really embellishing it up with some of these things that you can talk about and explain. I think that's really fun because children love that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Yep.
don't they? The
Yep.
more
They do.
detail you can have, like funny shoes or just go for the detail. I
And it's as simple as like my diamond brooch, this old
Yeah.
fashioned. and
Yeah.
the babies will be reaching for it. The little girls will be pointing at it. I mean, it's those little
Yeah.
things that do make big difference for sure, for sure.
Yes. But I think I guess my personal opinion on all of this is I I think the marriage of Santa and Mrs. Claus is really important to model for children. I
Hmm.
think the role modeling, I think the way you present yourself and how you interact is paramount. I think that, and I think the dress comes into that a little bit. They're a team, so I kind of like the connection between the two of them if they can do it. I mean, I think it's fun to be an original, but they are a team too, so that sort of comes into it. I think a little bit. I'm not a Mrs. Claus, only that I wrote in her voice. But I guess I mean it's that whatever it takes to sort of ignite your inner Mrs. Claus and to have this really vibrant, great experience for yourself. There's so much material you can work with.
Well, I know
You know,
that like when I work at the venue and I'm by myself, I'm fine. Kids, we're all having a good time. But I can also create the magic when Santa walks up and he just stands there waiting for me, like he's my husband. And the kids, they don't even realize he's standing behind them, but the parents are like, oh, Santa's here, Santa's here. And I'll keep talking to the children. He'll walk over and put his hand on my, shoulder or something. And everybody just holds their breath because they see this, and he is my friend. I'm not married to this Santa, but we work really well together and
right?
we can create this, but it's a magic. We're on our own, we're good. But when we come together, that we are a team and it's even stronger magic that's made. So I can't say
Yes.
enough about that. I just talked about this in Branson too. Um, that it does look nice to match your Santa or to think about like if he's got an outdoor outfit on, that maybe you should have your outdoor outfit on. Maybe not wear the little cap on your head like you're going to bed if you're going outside with Santa, you know.
Or the apron if you're not cooking.
Right, right.
Right? You're not like living
Definitely.
in an apron, right? Um,
Exactly.
but
So yeah, we just
but
talked about that.
whatever sort of makes you feel. There's so many of these ears are so beautiful. Like one of the slides I put in there was from a Life magazine, and it's the American Saint. It's called. It's a woman. She looks sort of like Mrs. Claus to me, but it's very Art Deco and it's beautiful. So one can do whatever. I mean, you can do it. I think the Goldie Hawn look. A lot of people like that whole sort of Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn look. Um, no, I think you can have fun with this. I don't think it's kind of a thing where, as a historian, I think drawing from history, some of the elements can add to the integrity of what you're doing because it's been there forever and it's like, but then there's another part of me that thinks being creative and coming up with your own storyline, your own look is also valid. Like some of the women who do like mid-modern, like 1950s,
Hmm.
the short sort of just past the knee, kind of, what are those dresses called? Dirndl, not dirndls. Um, what are they called? Circle skirts? I guess circle
Yeah,
skirts.
I'm not sure. I know that
Yeah.
like Betsy wears a pill hat, the little,
Yeah.
and it
That
looks
whole look,
amazing.
right? It's
That's her style.
fun.
Yeah.
It's got this swirly skirt. It's kind of like Grease, right? It's like it's fun. Like the big swirly
Mhm.
dance skirts. It's
And it's her
fun.
energy. She has that energy that
Exactly. So if you
matches that
really get
dress.
into that groove, then sure. If
See,
you're like
that's not
Katy
me though.
Perry,
I could never work.
and Katy,
That would never work for me.
Katy Perry, you're doing Mrs. Claus at the pool. I mean, okay, right? Like,
Right.
you know, it's fun. It's fun, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like not to make not this has any relevance to anything really, but Mrs. Claus was on the cover of Playboy. There you go.
Really.
She's been everywhere.
Oh my
But
goodness.
she never made it into a Coca-Cola commercial. Sprite was a character they created, an elf sort of
Oh,
character, but no, Mrs. Claus has never given the publicity through Coca-Cola that Santa Claus did. But she certainly has been in a lot of commercials, all
yeah.
kinds of things, and in a lot of movies. Um, but I don't know where she's headed. I think I see more and more, but that's because I'm involved in this. I think it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Could be.
you know, My husband used to tour on the PGA golf tour, and I used to think the world was one big golf course.
Yeah, I bet you.
It's
Wow.
not. So
There
when
is.
you work on this, you sort of think, oh, it's just Mrs. Cliff's everywhere, but
Yep.
it's because you're aware of it, right? It's not like, yeah.
That's why
But
we try to balance it out. Like we try to do other, like I'm in musicals and do other things just to, to get out of it a little, and then it makes you fresher when you come back and you're doing this.
right.
So
Like saying to your daughter who's only had a baby in July, I know which Santa we're going to. Like, it's a bit out there, isn't it? Yeah, it's a little bit.
I would be doing this. I will do the same thing someday. There's no doubt in my mind. I already do that, and yeah, I do that with people I
All
know.
she did was look at me and say, I haven't thought of that yet, Mom. I haven't got there yet.
I love that so much. Yeah.
But
And there's nothing
so,
better than having those children come back to you the year after year. The first year you're holding that baby the first time, and Santa's looking down and they're taking these beautiful pictures. And then the
yeah,
next year they're coming back and you see the pictures again. That's like just, it's
very
such
fun.
a reward back for us, for all the
Very,
time and everything. Just those
yeah,
little magical moments. So let
yeah.
me see if I had some really, I have a bunch of questions on here.
Okay.
Um, What impact do you hope your book has on the Claus community? What's the big picture or the big impact that you want to have there?
Well, I guess it would be to share, first of all, these wonderful stories because some of them are wonderful. Like they're wonderful. Like there's this one story where Sally comes home. It's 1870, I think. She comes home. He comes home and goes, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm done. She goes, why? And he goes, because the children are so bad. There's so many bad children. I'm done. And she goes, it can't be that bad. He goes, no, it is. And so then she says, he says, I'll stay home and cook dinner. You go. And she goes, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go see what's going on. And she goes out and she battles with the elves down the chimneys because they're throwing the bad deeds up the step. They're stuffing chimneys with bad deeds of children. And they're coming out with Claire called Billy a goat and, they all these things. And she battles with the elves and she tells them to knock it off because Santa has a job to do and this isn't okay and stuff. And finding those stories, right? It gives you a sense of the character's strength is not just I think somehow portrayed as sort of this subservient or something
Mhm.
going on there. She was always there as this, solo character who went off on her own sleigh and did things. And I think that gives you a better appreciation for her when you read things like that. And so I think that's it. And then also just because the art's so beautiful. The
Mhm.
art's so beautiful,
It
and I love
is.
art. I love art. So,
Me too.
I think just looking through a picture book and there's art on every single page, right? So just like my Twas a Night book, the art alone, and just to appreciate, you know, the skill of these people and I think that in itself has merit. So I hope people just enjoy the book. And I think that if someone puts out other of my books on a coffee table at Christmas or anywhere, they can just flip through it, anybody at any age, and get an appreciation for the legacy of this. And I think because it's America 250 coming up, I think it's really fun to sort of celebrate that these are American characters invented in America,
Mhm.
one in New York, one in Connecticut or Philadelphia, and um, and the world's a better place because of them. They're great, and they're known the world over. The Santa Claus is the most famous character of all time. "Twas Night for Christmas" is the most famous poem ever written, including all of Shakespeare. So,
Really? Wow.
more people in the world can recite the first two lines of "Twas Night for Christmas" than any other piece of English literature. It's pretty
That's
crazy.
crazy.
And it's
Wow.
10 generations, right? 10 generations have cherished it. But as I always say, I think I say this almost every single time I talk, is that the reason that people love Twas is because it's great, right? It's fun, it's jolly, it's rhymes, it's benevolent and kind. There's no naughty or nice. There's none of that stuff in it. Um, but it was read to a child by somebody at a very magical time of the year, by somebody close to them, and the power of reading to a child from someone they love, right? And igniting the imagination and yours, as you said, your love of books and love of literature. Many people, Twas is one of the first books that they have that experience with, and so it's it's really on us as grandparents to read it to our grandchildren and to make sure that it survives and that it's celebrated and goes on. And it will, for that very reason that people go, I read that to my grandchildren, my grandmother read it to me. It's this legacy thing.
And you
But
know what? Listening to you
yeah,
speak right now,
yeah,
it makes it even more important that we're reading this. Even if we
yeah,
read another book also, but to
yeah,
always have this as tradition when we are reading to children. Um,
I think
there's
so.
different ways you can read it. There's different books. I have one that's like for preschoolers. The pictures are a little bit different in it
Hmm.
for the younger ones. But I think it's important to read it. I do every time, everywhere
It's
we
very
go.
it's very important. I also, not to get political, but um, Santa Claus in the 1980s was challenged in the Supreme Court as a religious character, and the outcome was that he is a non-religious character, right? The Supreme Court ruled that he can be in schools, he can be Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus can be in schools, it can be anywhere, they can be in a public building, they can be in the White House, and they can be in the Library of Congress. Um, and I think that is interesting. But I think what how I sort of approach this is that these characters are sort of part of a legacy of Western culture. And I think they are rooted in Christianity because of St. Nicholas. But the
Right.
lessons of generosity of spirit, of benevolence, of um, giving without need of gratitude, of kindness, of thinking about somebody else, of charity, all these great values, right? Are they're that's what they personify, and so you can have that. You can take them anywhere,
Hmm.
and I think that's really terrific. I think that's really important, and so I defend them wherever I am. I have been in places where people have said you can't have these books in our museum because they're religious based, and I go, go read the Supreme Court ruling. So
Wow. What
sorry.
year was that again? What year was
Sorry, it was Chief Burgess, and I can send it to you. And he went, no, too that you're wielding. That's just too narrow a scope to define them. Some characters who've been part of history in American history for 200 years to be somehow um, disallowed from public buildings is too far. Is it too big a reach? I have this exact paragraph in my book. It's really really good. Um, but yeah, so I do defend them uh, because I am a historian and an art critic. I really defend Western culture as well, and I think in this day and age now we've actually moved. I don't have to defend it anymore. I just promote it. I support it and promote it, and
yeah.
I think that these characters are part of it. Um, and so sometimes I'll go to the story of Saint Nicholas, sometimes I won't, but I'll just it's all part of it. As a historian too, it's really wonderful to think that it comes from St. Nicholas from the third century. You can have a story of a lovely man who saw need with these three daughters who were going to be sold to slavery because they didn't have dowries. And he throws gold through a window at night anonymously, right?
Mhm.
That's just what this is all about. It's charity, kindness. So it's yeah, it's a big, and to be able to draw that thread from the third century through all of Western culture to today, and we're still telling the same fable or story through these characters is that's pretty great,
Pretty
right?
great. Totally.
Pretty great, right? So
So back when we were talking, I said something about an opera. It looks
oh
like
yeah,
Bruce's wife Jennifer looked it up. 2015, she found an opera, Becoming Santa Claus 2025 stage premiere. Uh,
okay. Oh, I think I have
I
that
was
in my book.
there was one that was
Is it an
way
opera or a theatrical? Yeah, I think
the
I
one
might
that
have it.
I found earlier a year or
Yeah,
so ago was like early 1800s, 1700s, something like that.
I'll go look it up. I'll
Yeah.
find it with the
Um,
help of my new friend AI. Yeah. Yeah,
hopefully.
I have becoming Mrs. I have becoming Santa in here, and her name was Jessica in that.
Okay.
Um, but yes.
Okay.
So
Let's see where else if I have any. I do want to say one thing. You've got to be the coolest grandma ever because when you tell the stories to the grandchildren, you are gonna just know so much. It's gonna be so cool. Just a side note when I was listening to you. Um,
well, I'm also an enormous fan of children's literature and Snoopy and everybody else, and I have a very
wow.
animated world. Like I live in a world of sort of creativity, and I always have.
Oh,
So
fun.
I I approach things in a really creative way, and so yeah, it's been really fun to be around grandchildren because I am pretty creative, and it's just it's wonderful to be like that. It's really made me appreciate that quality to retain that. And I think all of you have that because you
Oh,
are interact
definitely.
with children too, and it's just so lovely to see a little child's imagination be lit up, or to expose them to literature,
Yes.
to books and the world. I can't imagine a world without children's books. I can't imagine my childhood without children's books. I just can't imagine what that would have been like because it enriched me in so many ways. And I just support, reading to kids and opening up their minds. It's huge. And, once in a while I'll get caught by somebody who'll say they don't believe in Santa Claus. They don't believe in telling children lies and all this stuff. And I always say to them, what's your take on Snoopy? Is he a piece of white paper with black ink? Is he
Yeah.
more than that? Is Snoopy just a piece of white paper with black ink? Or is there something more there? Do you feel anything for Snoopy? Because I love Snoopy. He's
Hmm.
my family mascot. So I'm like, he's not just a piece of white paper, people. And then
Right.
they kind of go, right? Like your imagination, your creativity, that these things, how could you not have these in your life? How could you not have Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus and Snoopy? Like,
And yeah, it often doesn't make sense because when you talk to the parents, you're like looking at them like you don't even make sense to me what you're saying. It doesn't jive. Um, yeah, I keep losing.
yeah.
There's so many things still going through my mind. I want to ask you. Um, okay, let me think here. Okay, so if you would give advice to performers or storytellers who want to be authentic to a Mrs. Claus, what advice would you give them to
Well, I guess I
or
would.
Santas too? What Santas too?
I guess it's like what we just talked about is getting to the very essence of this character, what this character is really all about, right? You drop the naughty or nice
Thank you.
shtick.
Good.
It's got nothing to do with benevolence. It's got nothing to do with what this is all about, in my humble opinion. And Clement Clark Moore dropped it too. Clement Clark Moore even says nothing to dread. There's no naughty or nice. That if that poem had a line in there about someone being beaten up or threat of punishment with a stick, it wouldn't have survived 1850, right? It certainly wouldn't have been read by Michelle Obama from the White House. I mean,
Right.
you got to think about this stuff. It's kindness. The concept of judgment being onto somebody other than yourself, or if you believe in God, but that somebody has the right to punish you or judge you is like not really what this is about.
Mm-mm.
And I truly believe little children self-regulate because I can look at my 3-year-old granddaughter who's you know super smart, but I can look at her and I can make her self-regulate in 10 seconds, 2 seconds, just by sort of looking at her kind of because she knows. Like it doesn't
Right.
need me to do it.
No.
They know. So why would you why would you put that on a child? I find that
Well, often
kind
they
of
try to put it, they try to
authoritarian, right? It's kind of
right.
authoritarian, right?
Often they try to put it on me or Santa, and I just basically ignore the person that's doing that, the adult, and look right at the child, and say to the child, "I know you have a good heart. I know you have a big heart." And I just talk niceness, kindness, right? Don't even acknowledge any of the other because it
Yeah.
it does blow my mind. It's like, why are we talking about this?
It's like give a
I know.
dog a bad name, they'll live up to it, right? It becomes
Exactly.
such a
Let's label
right.
the child, the
Let's just
10-year-old
label
boy.
it
No
as
wonder
bad
they're, yeah.
or taking things away from people. But anyway, that's a parenting conversation. But as far as Mrs. Claus and Santa Claus, these are benevolent, kind characters. They've got nothing to do with judging your behavior in my world.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing for sure. And then the other thing would just be their relationship because I think it's so incredibly important that they model this teamwork.
I like
There's
that.
none of the he gets the glory, I don't. That's just so old. I'm a product of the feminist movement of the 1970s. I tell you, you know, we're empowered, we're equal. We we don't need, if we don't have that one figured out yet, um,
To me,
like I'll hear my dog.
it's love
I'll
and
hear
respect is what it is. Love and
any equality of effort. Everybody's working on the, you're a team, it's like the teamwork. So any kind of that kind of stuff, which we certainly don't see in our Claus community, but you might see it. One of the commercials, that latest one on Boots, she's kind of taken a few slugs at Santa. Not on, because these kids need to see what partnership and marriage, working together.
yeah.
Sure, you might have a few little things, right? But basically, you're the team, especially when you're presenting and you only have a few minutes with these kids. You want to present like that. That would be, I don't see warring Santas and Mrs. Clauses.
No, it's not going to
But so
get.
I think the naughty and nice is the number one, and number two would just be the united, how great they both are, how great that, and how much they both love each other. Because some of these, like I read you that one story when they're snuggling and having this quiet little moment together. It's so cute, right?
Yeah.
So great.
And you can see it, and it reflects into everybody that's watching you when you do this stuff. You can see
Yeah.
it. Their hearts are all warming up, and they're loving Santa and Mrs. Claus.
Well,
You know?
just think of the president of France with his wife compared to Catherine and Prince William, right? On that
Yes,
state tour. Look at the body language alone. These things matter, like just little
yes, they
things.
do. Very
Maybe a
much.
3-year-old doesn't pick up on that, but I think it matters a little bit. But
And
yeah,
anybody can do it. I work with different Santas, and it's fine. It's
yeah,
fine. We're
yeah,
actors.
yeah,
Do it,
yeah.
folks.
And Santa can cook. Santa can help in the kitchen too. Like it goes to like Santa
Well,
can cook. He cooks. Yeah,
and I have a really good elf named Phineas. He's in the
good
picture
name.
too. He's the
That's a
best.
good name.
So I talk a lot about him, and working, controlling, not really controlling, but helping run everything with Phineas helps me. He's my side helper. So, and the other thing I wanted to add is I talk to classes and groups about art and how important it is for our minds. And we are all creative, especially this community.
Hmm.
And we are all creative. No matter if you've been told you're not creative, we are creative. It's just your adult part of you taking over in the logic. Um,
Right.
so I really go in depth in my classes on this type of stuff, and do some exercises where people can open up and feel this. And it's wonderful, the creativity, and be creative with your friends. And we have such a good community to do this with. So
Hmm.
I just wanted to add that because it's really important to know this part of it, and that it's good for the brain and all that type of stuff.
I think
Do a
it's
lot.
just like living poetically, like
Yes.
living poetically and living creatively. It adds so much to your life, right? To have art. Well, yeah, yeah. I always have. It's just been art's been a big thing for me ever since I was really little. I've loved it. So I guess it's my hobby, but yeah. So I
It
think
makes me super happy. And I love talking
yeah,
to you because I
yeah.
love that everything you're doing with this history, and you're helping us out so much with everything, all these years you've been putting into this.
Yeah.
Um, and I plan on promoting your books when I have my classes.
Thank you, thank you.
Definitely. This is
Yeah.
going to be like the go-to for people that are starting. They need to get this book, and they need to read their history on it. I think it's good information. I also
Thank you.
have, I didn't pull it out, but I have that little book that talks about Mother Goose as
Yes, the boy lived in Pudding Lane.
I bought
The,
that one a couple years.
yeah,
Yep, I have that one. I actually bought, or Jeff bought one for Betsy, and we sent it to her that year. So
yeah.
we all got
Yeah,
that one.
I still have all my books. Like I still have lots of inventory. I plan to tour. I'm touring this year. I start in September. As I mentioned, it's Sturbridge, Old Sturbridge, and I'm doing Rhode Island. I'm doing Connecticut a lot. I'm doing New York, and I'm doing Maine quite a bit.
Nice.
Maine, and I met quite a few of the Moore family when I was doing my work, and I've been invited by one of the Moors to go and speak there. So I'm going, but I plan to do this again next year, hopefully, and then do a couple Santa Claus conventions maybe, and then tour again next year, and then retire in February of 2027. So that's kind of my game plan. And so, if anybody wants me to come and speak anywhere, let me know because I'm sort of doing my schedule. I was going to be at the Mrs. Santa Claus world premiere in at the Goodspeed in East Haddam in Connecticut, but they canceled it last week.
Oh
They're
man.
doing White Christmas instead. Excuse me. So I
That's
have like 6 dates, I think, free now, which I
okay.
have to slot in. So if there's an event or something that somebody, and the other thing is, all of my books are available for fundraising. So if you have an event and you want a whole bunch of books, like let me know because I can, provide
Okay.
them at a very reasonable price.
Okay. We
Because I
appreciate that.
am planning to retire in 27. So, if anybody has any ideas, that would be great.
Okay. I will keep you in mind definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. If you ever need anybody to go with you to these parties for the
Okay.
more, that stuff, let me know. I'd be there because
Okay.
I cherish this stuff. This is wonderful.
Well, we had so much fun last year in Manhattan when we were doing this event, and we had about 200 people coming. And I said to the person who was hosting it, I said, how are we doing with finding the Moors? Because one of them was on the board
Yeah.
of the General Seminary, right? And he said, I haven't had any luck. So I had to go and do some genealogy. So I went and did some genealogy, and I found someone who I thought was a Moor somewhere, and I found 30 of them. I found 30 Moors, and I found Clement Clarke Moore the sixth, and he's on the board of the Morgan Library in New York. And he came, and then it was really fun because I'd always known they had a family vault because I'd read about it with all the paintings from Clement Clarke Moore. I
Oh my
knew that
God.
these are very wealthy people, right? They owned all of Chelsea and a lot of Saratoga Springs. Like they owned a lot of Newton and Queens and everything in Elmhurst. Anyway, and so I said, I was on a Zoom call with all these Moors one night, and I said, "Does anybody know where the vault is?" Just
Yeah.
asking where the paint. I said, "Does anybody know where the paintings are?" I didn't say the vault, and she said nobody said anything. And then when I was on the Zoom call another time with them, I said, "Anybody know where those paintings are?" And this one woman said, "I have them." And I went, "You do?"
Oh
So
my.
anyway, after this whole thing last year, I got contacted by a member of the Ogden family in San Francisco, and they said my father's 95 years old. He's Clement Clarke Moore's daughter's husband's family, right? And he's in Ogden, so she was Mary Moore Ogden. And he said we have the illumination. We have the very first illustrated copy of "Twas by his daughter," who she did in
Wow.
1862 or 61 for her husband, and it's been in a vault since 1970. And we'd like to donate it somewhere. And I said, "Oh, well, I know where to go." And they said, "Where?" And I said, "Go to the Morgan. Go to the
Uh-huh.
Morgan, and then we'll all get to see it." And
That-
so I got it donated to the Morgan. And I
Oh
went
my
to the
God.
Morgan. I went to the Morgan in New York with them and with Clement Clarke Moore and with the head of the Morgan, the archivist guy, and it's there. I was so happy.
That is so amazing. I love
That was a
this.
yeah. It
Good
got
for
written up in a whole bunch of art magazines. I didn't get mentioned. I was kind of like, boo.
yeah,
But that's okay. That's okay. You don't do these things. I was just really happy it was in the public
yeah.
domain. Now it's at the Morgan. Terrific. Um, but yeah, just in closing, I have to say, if you're going to, I always say too, if you're going to read somebody, read Washington Irving. This is the year to read him. It's celebrating America's 250th. Washington Irving's Christmas stories are laugh out loud stuff. They
Really?
are
Okay.
fun. His early stuff, Sega Monday, and his old Christmas stories. And Washington Irving was such an amazing talent. He Without Washington Irving, we wouldn't have Charles Dickens's Christmas Carol. Like it's so important people understand the contribution of Washington Irving. So if I do another lecture for next year, it would be on the people of American history, Christmas, like the people who we need to remember. Maybe the top 100 or 25, but Washington Irving is there.
Okay.
And F.O.C. Doherty, the father of American illustration, who's the one who did "Twas Night for Christmas" in 1862, and it's a really influential because he was so famous. Influential edition. So yeah. Anyway, that's another day, another
That's
conversation.
amazing. Well,
Another
we're going to
conversation.
have you back on here when you
Yeah,
can
we can
find
talk about
time to.
maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, plan
yeah,
on it.
yeah.
You can always plan on being on my show with
Thank
any.
you,
Yeah, definitely.
thank
Um,
you.
And let me see if there's anything else. I think our audience we're good. There wasn't really any questions, just comments. Everybody's having a
Okay.
nice time tonight listening. They're enjoying it.
Okay.
Um, very good positive feedback on here.
Good.
Phineas is blushing because I was talking about my favorite elf. He's on here. um, so thank you all for joining us tonight. Okay, everywhere we have looked, it doesn't release until September 22nd. Is that the newest book?
Uh, on Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have copies.
Okay.
If you if you Facebook message me, I can mail you one. Or yes, if you want one before then, sure.
Okay.
Let me
Um,
know.
so with that, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you so much. I really, everything you do is so amazing, and
Thank
you give
you.
so much to all of us. It's such a
Thank
gift.
you. No, thanks a lot.
So
It's been fun.
yeah, and we'll keep in touch and do some stuff in the future. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I want to thank all the viewers for being here tonight and joining us. And a little I guess next week, I'm going to have Stay Bearded on Monday. It's going to be a great show. He's got some new products and some new Santa line stuff that we're going to talk about. Um, and maybe I think some other products that he has developed that we're going to discuss. And I'm not sure if he'll have him on the show, but hopefully. Um, and let me see. I was so focused on what we were talking about here. I think that is it for the night. I want to thank Angela for all your help with producing this show. You did a wonderful job. And for Bob, putting the pictures together and everything you guys do for us, you are appreciated. So, with that, I want to say my closing would be everything we do is for the children, the ones before us, beside us, and beyond us. So, with that, I want to say good night and love to you all. And we will see you next Monday. Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you for having me. That was fun. Thanks.